What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pass podcast. I'm Phil Perry, just a couple days away from the new year, so we're bringing in our buddy Matt Cassel to talk about some New Year's resolutions. We want to hear from the man himself, what he has planned for the next 12 months, but we're also going to be talking heavy New England Patriots. We're going to do a little role play as well. So Bill Belichick, Mac Jones, what should their New Year's resolutions be for 2023? We talk a lot about Bill O'Brien, a lot of news about Bill O'Brien of late. He actually mentioned in a press conference the fact that he hasn't talked to anybody in New England since last April, but speculation obviously there that he could be back in Foxborough to be working with Mac Jones in the Patriots offense next season as they look to change things based on what happened to them offensively here in 2022. So would he be open to it? I know he's open to an NFL return. We had Albert Breer on the podcast just a couple weeks ago to talk about his interest as far as that goes. He's focused on what Alabama is doing right now in their bowl game, but it would not surprise me if soon after the NFL season, Bill Belichick is on the horn because he has to know, he has to move fast. These coaching changes happen very, very quickly. And if he doesn't pick up that phone soon after the Patriots season is done, somebody else will and maybe scoop up Bill O'Brien. Does he land in Tennessee? If Tennessee moves on from its offensive coordinator, how about out in Vegas? Is Josh McDaniels looking for help on the offensive side because he would like to become sort of that big picture CEO, all around true head coach and not an offensive coordinator who has the head coach's title? Would he like to focus on the overarching duties associated with that head job and then have somebody more experienced to be running his offense? Mick Lombardi's the offensive coordinator in Vegas right now, but maybe McDaniels would be interested in reuniting with somebody who runs his system in Bill O'Brien. So a lot of great O'Brien talk with Cassel. Also want to mention just a few as we get into the college football playoff, a few college names for you to keep an eye on from a Patriots perspective. But first, let's get right into our conversation with Matt Cassel. All right, there he is. There's our great friend, Matt Cassel. Matt, before we get into our New Year's resolutions for the New England Patriots, I have to ask you first one question about this upcoming game between the Patriots and the Dolphins. We know essentially a playoff game for the Patriots. They've got to win this thing to be able to continue to have a chance to eke in to the postseason. But you are intimately familiar with the guy who's going to be starting at quarterback for the Miami Dolphins this week, whereas the rest of us, not so much, because Teddy Bridgewater is their guy going into this Patriots game, and we haven't seen very much of him. He played a little bit earlier this year when Tua Tagovailoa was dealing with his initial concussion issue. Now out again with a concussion issue. What can you tell us about Teddy? Because you spent some time with him in Minnesota.
Yeah, you can't sleep on Teddy B, man. Teddy Bridgewater, he was a rookie. He came in my last year when I was with the Minnesota Vikings, and we competed throughout camp. But talk about a great guy, great teammate, and a really good player. And he doesn't get a lot of credit. I know he's been on a lot of different teams, and his career kind of got a little bit derailed talking about the Minnesota Vikings when he had that horrific knee injury in practice. It was a non-contact thing, but thank God he was able to come back. But this is a guy that's got a tremendous amount of experience. He's somebody that can make all the throws. He's very instinctive inside the pocket, like makes people miss, and he's got this savviness to him to extend plays. Now, he's not a guy that's going to take off and run for a bunch of yards and all that stuff, but he is very good in the confines of the pocket and also making people miss in the pocket and awareness there, and to be able to deliver the ball where he needs to deliver the ball. So it's one of those things where you look at Tua in the season that he's had up to this point, and he's played very well at different points. But I think Teddy Bridgewater is a guy that you can't go into this game and say, well, they're playing their backup, because he's a guy that, like I said, has great experience and can win a ball game for you.
Is he essentially a right-handed Tua Tagovailoa when it comes to skill set, meaning he'll be able to read things out pretty quickly, get the ball out of his hand quickly? You mentioned it. He's not necessarily going to scramble for a bunch of yardage. Really, Tua's the same way, but Tua is a little bit mobile, right? Like they'll roll him out and he can move around in the pocket a little bit. He has some pretty good instincts in there. So I guess what makes him different than Tua outside of his right-handedness is there much difference between these two guys?
there's not a tremendous amount of difference. So they're going to be able to run the same offensive structure. He can make all the throws similar to Tua. He doesn't have one of those explosive arms on him, but at the same time, he throws with timing. He throws with anticipation. He can extend plays, and he also can do the pocket movement stuff when they want to get him outside the pocket with the bootlegs and the action, that type of action. So I think it's going to be a very similar game plan than what we've seen with Tua on the field. It's going to be, they're going to try to attack you vertically in the vertical passing game. They're going to try to get the quick hitters, the quick posts, the slants. They'll have a little bit of the quick game and then move the pocket situation. So he'll be able to run this offense effectively in the same manner in which Tua did.
Patriots could have their hands full with that passing game, even if it's Teddy Bridgewater, because Marcus Jones, and this has become a Marcus Jones podcast here on Next Bats. Marcus Jones did not practice on Wednesday with a concussion. Jack Jones didn't practice with a knee injury, and Jalen Mills also didn't practice on Wednesday. He continues to be banged up. So the Patriots could be looking at John Jones, Miles Bryant, and Sean Wade as their top three corners against one of the most explosive receiver groups in the NFL. Not ideal. All right, Cassel, let's get into our resolution. So just a couple days away from the new year, Matthew. So let's do what the people want us to do here, which is talk about ourselves. Okay. So you're going to hit me with a New Year's resolution. You got to hit me with one New Year's resolution, because then we're going to dive into some Patriots resolutions. But everybody wants to know first, what is Matt Cassel planning on for 2023? What are your goals, sir?
You know, my goals, believe it or not, one of my goals this year is going to be to read a book, a new book, once a month. So 12 books throughout the course of a year, one a month, try to get through it. I don't know why. Something's pulling me to more literature, to more reading, to just grow as an individual. So that's my New Year's resolution this year. How about that?
I love that. I love that. And it is, listen, I've thought about this. Not going to say that I've done it. I haven't done the book a month thing yet, but maybe I should do that too. Maybe I'll take this as a challenge from you.
Yeah, we'll start a book club.
Doable. It's doable, right? You could do basically 10 pages a day. 10 pages a day. That's nothing.
That's
10
nothing.
pages
We could
a day.
do that. We could
By
knock
the end
that
of the
out.
month, book's done. Boom. Easy.
Boom. And we got to hold each other accountable. That's a big part of it.
All right. I like that. More books from Cassel. Grow that brain that is already massive. It's soon going to be spilling out of your ears. I'm going to just try to drink more water, Matt. I don't think I am doing that enough, especially during the season. I find that I'm getting tired in the middle of the day, and then I realize I have not had a sip of water, but I have had 4 coffees, and that's probably not helping me or anyone around me, quite frankly. So, all right, that's enough from us. How about the Patriots? What are you going to do? Let's do a little role play, okay? Role play, something that I'm sure you would be interested in. You're Bill Belichick.
Right.
Now, we don't have to talk about self-improvement here. Let's talk about any changes, period, in the new year. You're Bill Belichick. What is your New Year's resolution for your football team?
Ooh, that's a very complicated discussion right now. If I'm Bill Belichick evaluating my football team, obviously, what are you looking at? You're looking at your division first and foremost, and you're looking at the Buffalo Bills. How do we eventually beat the Buffalo Bills? Because they've dominated us over these last few seasons, and they're at the top of the division right now. Obviously, the other opponents in our division has gotten better. So what do we need to do? Defensively, I think that they've got a good core of players on the defensive side of the ball, and that's shown up week in and week out throughout the course of the season. Really, what my focal point will be on the offensive side of the ball. Will it be a change at the play caller position? Because there's been a lot of talk, obviously, with Matt Patricia coming in and the disarray that this offense has been in for majority of this season. So what do we need to get better at? I think one, it's stability in the offensive line. It's continuity. It's getting the right pieces there at the tackles and having more consistency there. I think the interior part of the offensive line is a good group, and they'll continue to grow. In terms of the skill players, they have enough to win, but is it enough to compete against the teams like the Buffalo Bills when you get into a shootout, to give Mac Jones the ability to go out there and the weapons that he needs to get the playmakers their ball and be able to have production offensively? So I think it's really the focal point is going to be offensively. How can we get more explosiveness in the offense and more production on their side of the ball?
Okay, I like that. Offensive side of the ball. If I'm Bill Belichick, Explosiveness, yes. Continuity, functionality, efficiency. I think the number one thing has to be a coaching change on that side of the ball. The question to me, Matt, is who is that coach? Who represents that change? I want to get into this with you because you have been in a number of different offenses and you've worked with a
Yes, I
number of
have.
different coordinators. And I'm looking at the piece that you wrote for NBC Sports Boston.com, and you had Chan Gailey and Todd Haley in 2009 in Kansas City, Charlie
Right.
Weiss, Bill Muir, Jim Zorn, Brian Dayball, Norv Turner, Bill Musgrave, Greg Roman. I mean, the list goes on and on. A little Terry Rubisky, mix him in there with Jim Bob Cooter at the
Scott
very end
Linehan.
in
Yeah,
Detroit.
Scott Linehan in
Scott
Dallas too.
Linehan. How could I
Yeah.
forget in Dallas? I mean, the list goes on and on. So you're familiar with a lot of different coordinators, a lot of different offenses. If you're Bill Belichick, who is your number one option?
Well, I think the obvious candidate, a lot of people in the Patriots who they're familiar with, is Bill O'Brien. And Bill O'Brien has been with the Patriots. He's been the offensive coordinator. He was there when I was there. He was a wide receivers coach, moved on, Penn State, Houston, back at Alabama, and has accomplished a lot as a coach in the NFL and also at the college rankings. But the reason that you think Bill O'Brien is because there won't be a complete overhaul in this offense. He's familiar with the terminology, the scheme. Hopefully, will bring very similar terminology. Now, there might be some wrinkles because even Brian Dayball, when he was with me in New England, he was the wide receiver coach. He moved on to the Jets and was actually my offensive coordinator in the Kansas City Chiefs my last year with the Kansas City Chiefs, but he completely changed all of his terminology. So that's one thing that you have to think about when you've got Mac Jones and he's going into his third year. He had a different coordinator this year, but if you go out and get a guy that has different terminology and a complete overhaul and scheme, now you're learning a whole new offensive playbook. And it's not just Mac Jones, it's wide receivers, it's that offensive line. And that takes a little time for everybody to get used to that. I'll never forget going in, and Norv Turner came in my second year in Minnesota, and he was a number system, and it was different terminology for protection schemes and how he did it and how he called their motions and everything like that. And it was a grind that offseason because, again, your mastery of an offense, that helps you perform on Sundays. And when I say that, I mean, usually if you're in an offense for 2-3 years, you know the details of that offense. You understand the different route concepts and where to go with the football, and you don't second guess yourself because you've seen it. It's been time on task, the repetitions that take place. So the comfort level is there. And sometimes when you get a new offensive scheme, you are learning on the go, even as you get into season, because things don't just come second nature. Sometimes it's reps that you get for the first time in practice, and you're trying to incorporate something into that offensive game plan. So that's a lot tougher. But Bill O'Brien, if he's able to bring familiar terminology and scheme and then just build on that, well, that would be a plus for Mac Jones. It'd be a plus for this offense, and it would help with his growth.
Yeah, I would think not only can he bring that familiar terminology and the familiar scheme that Mac Jones really performed in pretty effectively in year one of his NFL career, but he also has the benefit of having learned this Alabama offense, and
Mhm.
learning it in part from Mac Jones back in 2021, right before Mac Jones was drafted, because we know the way they do it in Alabama. You run Nick Saban's offense. You don't bring
Right.
your offense to Alabama because those guys cycle through so frequently. Saban doesn't want to be turning over the offensive scheme year after year after year. So he knows the old Patriot system. He knows the Alabama offense that Mac Jones had a
Right.
lot of success in. And there are some concepts I'm sure that he could bring with him to the Patriots if that were to come to pass. So that to me makes the most sense. That would be my number one outside the building option if I'm Bill Belichick. If you want to stay inside the building and you want to try to just shake things up and try something different, maybe, just go with Nick Caley. Go with the guy that I think would have made a lot of sense to people, even if we would have looked at it and said, okay, this guy hasn't called plays before, but let's see how it goes. He kind of followed that track that others have in the past. He's been in the system here in New England for the better part of the last decade. He's a bright guy. He's a well-respected guy across the league. So if they wanted to make sure that he stuck around and let him take the reins in 2023, sure. But if you're looking outside the building, Bill O'Brien just makes a ton of sense. I would think maybe, and I wrote about this in a recent mailbag, maybe if you want to go and really lean into that West Coast thing with somebody who's been in a West Coast offense now for the last few years. One interesting name, actually, Cassel's a former Patriots draft pick. you were gone by the time he got there because I believe he was drafted in 2010. Zach Robinson, ZAC Robinson, is an
Okay.
offensive assistant for Sean McVay with the Rams, has been for the last few years. We know how much Bill Belichick respects Sean McVay, so maybe that's one possibility. Drew Petzing is a name. He actually interviewed for McDaniels's offensive coordinator job this past offseason out in Vegas. That job went eventually to Mick Lombardi, who jumped from the Patriots to the Raiders. But Petzing's the quarterback's coach for the Cleveland Browns, who's running essentially that Gary Kubiak / Mike
Right.
Shanahan offense because of the connection in Minnesota that Kevin Stefanski has carried with him to Cleveland. So there are a few different sort of options there. And then here's an interesting one, Castle. Okay.
Now, here we
How
go.
would you
I love
feel?
interesting ones.
Would it make you feel old if Charlie Weiss Jr. ended up in New England and having a significant offensive role because he's at Ole Miss right now and he's running their offense. He's in the family, right? He would be
Right. He's in the family.
Charlie's still a trusted guy and a good friend of Bill Belichick's. And so maybe that's a way for Bill to keep it in the family, but also modernize things a little bit with what they're running down there in the SEC.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've got a lot of different candidates and they have a lot of different backgrounds. And again, it's a choice that Bill Belichick has to make is he willing, after running this type of scheme since what, 2000, 2001, they've had the same offense, right? And the coordinators come in and they run the Patriots offense. And now after that duration of time, are you willing to go out and bring in a completely new offensive scheme and change what you've done in terminology and go West Coast or number system or whatever some of these guys might bring to the table? That's might be what they're looking for, is something distinctly different from what they've been in the past. And so that's a question that Bill Belichick has to answer. And it's also, does he think that a guy like Mac Jones can thrive in a situation like that? And then I go back to Bill O'Brien, though, because Bill O'Brien is somebody that has shown that adaptability. We go back to Deshaun Watson, his rookie year. He was one of the first guys to really go out and say, look, the college game was the college game at that point, but the RPO, the zone read, and all that stuff wasn't so much involved in the offenses in the pro style game. But then when you look at what he did with Deshaun Watson that first year, he incorporated those same concepts that Deshaun Watson was really good at and really successful at in Clemson, and he incorporated that into the offense. And therefore, Deshaun Watson had a heck of a first year. And a lot of it was because Bill O'Brien wasn't going to sit there and say, hey, no, this is what we're going to do. This is our offense. You're going to have to learn our offense. He said, what is that player's strengths? How can we make him the best player that he can possibly be out in the field? Well, it's putting in concepts that he's comfortable with. And you saw that throughout the early part of Deshaun Watson's career. So when you look at Bill O'Brien, I think he's a guy that has shown in the past that he can adapt to certain situations, play to player strengths. And in Mac Jones' case, can do that as well.
Yeah, I love that point about Bill O'Brien. It's something you have to be able to do in today's game. And I think, listen, you could look at him as a bad GM because it didn't go well for the Texans when he was tasked with running the front office there for the brief time that he did that. But as a coach, they were always competing for that division. And when you look at the collection of quarterbacks he had, Matt, before Deshaun Watson, it was never a franchise guy. It was, Brian Hoyer, TJ Yates, like there was, Brandon Whedon. It was every year. It felt like it was a different guy too. And so he had to be able to take his offense and fit it to whoever was back there behind center. He did have to, here comes that word again that Bill Belichick used before this season began, streamline things. Like he had an idea of how things should work, but he would never saddle somebody like TJ Yates with the entire, 2011 New England Patriots offensive playbook. He just would
Right.
never ask those guys to do everything that Tom Brady could do. So if he were to come here and have somebody like Mac Jones, who does already have some experience with that, I'm sure he'd be able to whittle down on, what was available to him the last time he was in New England and still find ways to keep things fresh and stay effective on that side of the ball. Okay, so Bill Belichick looking for change in 2023 on the offensive side of the ball. I think that's safe to say. How he goes about doing it will be fascinating to see. How about Mac Jones? Let's put ourselves in Mac Jones's shoes. And Castle, I'm going to tell you my New Year's resolution if I'm Mac Jones. My
Okay.
New
Talk to
Year's
me.
resolution is to become the best recruiter I can possibly be. And I say that because I think this team is in desperate need of help on a couple of different fronts, but there's one front in particular that I think he really is going to need some veteran help at, and it's along the
Mhm.
offensive line and it's at tackle specifically. And there's only
Right.
a couple guys available in free agency that I think are, maybe 3 or 4 that are really truly solid starting caliber players, but I kind of think you need one. I just think it's dangerous to sort of pigeonhole yourself into picking one in the draft, and usually that's where you find those guys, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a dice roll. They're going to end up picking in sort of the middle of the first round. So it's not like you're going to get a Laramie Tunsil type, inside
Right.
the top 5. So I think you're going to have to start making some calls if you're Mac Jones, and you're going to have to start encouraging Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick, if you can, to throw as much money as makes sense at somebody like Mike McGlinchey from San Francisco, so that you just have that other tackle spot shored up, whether it's, Trent Brown at left or Trent Brown at right. At least he's under contract for next year. At least, when he's right, he's a very capable player. But you can't go into next season with a similar situation on the other side opposite Brown. So start recruiting hard. There's not a ton available at receiver in free agency, so maybe that's where you end up spending some draft capital. Start making your pitches at some of these big boys, Castle, because he needs to be protected. We know that about his game. So I'd be working the phones if I were him. What would be
Yeah.
your New Year's resolution if you're Mac Jones?
For him, it probably started at Christmas. What kind of gifts does he give out to his offensive line, right?
Oh,
Because you
interesting.
always have to take care of your offensive line. And so guys probably that are getting recruited and stuff like that, you can lean on that. You can say, look, I give really good offensive gifts for you guys protecting me up front. But I agree with you. Like, you need stability at the tackle position. It's the most important position on the offensive line other than the center, because every week in and week out, the best players, the best athletes on the field are usually those defensive ends. And if you aren't protected and you don't feel comfortable in the pocket, look, it's going to make it for a tough day at the office. And we saw that against the 2 games against the Jets and also against the Colts. Now, we also know that they suffered a lot of injuries and guys, they weren't at full strength against those teams. But at the end of the day, if you're getting hit in your mouth consistently and you don't feel protected, you're going to have a sense of urgency. You're going to rush throws. You're not going to be in rhythm. And your anticipation, you're probably going to anticipate a little too early, get the ball out of your hands a little quick, and not be as comfortable in the pocket. So that's a big component of their success going into next season. Now, how much say he has in any of that? Probably little to none, to be honest with you, just of how this organization's run with Bill Belichick. But at the end of the day, if they can get one of these top free agents in the building and really solidify that position, I think that will help them moving forward.
Okay, you've been pretty critical at times of Mac Jones's comportment on the field. If we're talking New Year's resolutions,
Mhm.
does he have to resolve to download the Calm app? Start listening to some nature sounds. Do we have
Yeah.
to work on some
The
breathing
the birds,
exercise?
do, or maybe the rain app to really let you just calm your senses, buddy. Calm your senses. Like I said, I love his fire. I love his compassion. I love that he's a competitor. And sometimes you have to bring that sense of urgency to your offense, whether it's you're screaming on the sideline at times and all that stuff. But to do it on the field, to show up your coaches, that's not the look that you're looking for. I think it works against you, and it doesn't show that calm poise nature that you need to have at the quarterback position, because there's a lot of guys that'll push the panic button, including coaches and everybody else. But the one person that can't push the panic button, that guys got to look in their eyes and understand, hey, they're focused, they're ready to go, is the quarterback position. And so there's just been too many of those circumstances throughout the duration of this season where I think he just needs to calm down on some of the antics on the field. But like I said, there's going to be times where you explode. I've been there. Every quarterback that's played in the NFL for a long period of time, you're going to have those moments where you blow up. It's an emotional game. You're out there competing. You're getting hit. All those different things come in and factors come into play. But at the end of the day, just more of a sense of calm on the field, and then do what you got to do when you get off the field or behind closed doors.
This is bringing me back to the O'Brien conversation that we just had, because he's not known to be the most calm guy on the planet either. So if you bring
I
him
know.
aboard, well, first of all, give us your best Bill O'Brien story.
Best Bill O'Brien story. One which I got to bring my boy Matt Light into it. It was pretty funny. We had the double West Coast games, right? And we stayed out in the West Coast. And Bill O'Brien and I would always mix it up. I love mixing up with him because, again, he's a fiery guy, and you could get under his skin a little bit, and you'd love going back and forth. And we'd always have these interactions together. But it was all out of fun, all out of love. but at the same time, it was continuous throughout the course of the season. So we're on this West Coast trip. Light goes down, somehow gets Bill O'Brien's key and goes up to his room and puts my playing card all over his bathroom. He puts it all over his wall. He puts it in his shower, puts it underneath his pillow, and then leaves the room. And then so we don't see Bill until later on that afternoon. But Bill comes in, he goes, that was pretty good. You guys are a bunch of you-know-whats, but that was pretty good right there. Just because they knew that we always mixed it up. But that was one of the funnier stories, just because it speaks of the camaraderie, that group, Matt Light, his different ways in which to get under people's skin. It was great.
If you're Bill O'Brien, you got to be sleeping with one eye open the rest of that trip, because if you know that Matt Light can just get into your room whenever he damn well pleases, that has to be terrifying.
It's got to be terrifying, because nobody wants to give access to Matt Light on anything, because he'll take advantage of it and somehow create a full, blow up situation where, I mean, Matt Light's just special in that circumstance, and he is the ultimate prankster. So you got to love Matt Light and what he brings to the table.
Yeah, the next thing you know, he's in your room and he's got his deer urine spray out that he uses as a hunter, and it's all over the inside of your hotel room, and you can't figure out what it is exactly, but somehow Matt Light was involved.
You got to expect the unexpected when you're on good old Matty Light.
Do you think those two, again, intense guy? We saw him go back and forth with Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady, had a great relationship with Bill O'Brien,
right?
And I think learned from Bill O'Brien, which is hard to do when you're Tom Brady. That like guys like Charlie Weiss and Josh McDaniels and Bill O'Brien, like they had to really elevate themselves to be able to, at a certain point in Brady's career, be able to continue to teach him things.
Right.
So they got along, but Mac Jones and Bill O'Brien, how do you see that? We talked about the scheme and how it might smooth over any sort of rough edges of transition that Mac Jones might be experiencing if and when he goes through his third coordinator in 3 years. But how about personality wise? How do you see those guys melding?
Yeah, it's interesting because Brady's the ultimate competitor, right? And he's fiery. You've seen it. You saw the blow-ups that took place when even Bill O'Brien was there. And the one thing is Bill O'Brien will hold his ground, right? And he's going to let you know how he feels. He's not going to hold back any punches. He's a figure of authority. He understands that, and he's compassionate about it, and he's a competitor as well. So there might be those instances, and that's just going to happen when you have two similar personalities trying to achieve the same goals. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to respect from the players and respect from coaches. And if you guys go out and you work together and do your job efficiently and effectively, then you always can get along with somebody. But there'll be those moments, right, where they disagree or they don't get along, but that's just part of the game. And that's part of, no matter what the personalities are, whether it's Bill O'Brien or somebody else. So you're going to have those situations occasionally.
All right. Will be very interesting to see how the Patriots turn things over in the new year. We understand Matt Cassel is going to become a literary fiend. I'm going to be as hydrated as the day is long. Who knows what happens with the Patriots? But I'm sure Patriots fans out there hoping that the year goes a little bit differently than 2022 did. Hey, if you have New Year's resolutions, listeners, hit us up on our Apple Podcast page. Leave us your resolution in the comment section, Cassel.
Oh, yeah.
And then we will go through some of those, and I will try to provide you mini motivational speeches to push you through the early portion of the new year, give you that momentum you need, like you're riding a bike for the first time. I'm going to have my hand on the small of your back, and I'm going to be pushing you down the sidewalk so that you can be off and running, off and rolling, all on your own in 2023. We're going to become better people here, Cassel, next year together. We're going to do it together. That's the important thing.
That's the goal each and every year, just to become a little bit better each and every day as you progress through that year.
You make me better every day. I appreciate you very much. Thank you for being with us here on Next Path.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, buddy.
Great stuff there from Cassel. And I'm serious. Let us know about your New Year's resolutions in 2023. If you think they're stupid, if you think they're silly, if you think they're a waste of time because people drop them about a week or two in, I'm not going to blame you, but you can let us know about that in the comment section as well. While you're there, please, 5-star reviews Always appreciated. They were in 2022. They will be in 2023. All right. Now let's get to a couple of prospect names because in the college football playoff, there's going to be loads and loads of draftable names available to the Patriots, whether it's the first round, second round, third round. Let's not get too in the weeds, but I did want to go and give a shout out to our guy, Dane Brugler from The Athletic. Go back and listen to our episode with Dane just a few weeks ago, where he talks about some of the names that you're going to see during bowl season who could be of interest to the Patriots based on some of their needs. But he just came out with a piece that I loved called the 12 must-see NFL draft prospect matchups in the college football playoff. It's on The Athletic right now. If you don't subscribe, what are you doing? Make sure you do that and check out Dane's great work there. He has as the number one matchup, he has CJ Stroud, quarterback for Ohio State, against this Georgia defense, but he specifically highlights the name of Christopher Smith. And the reason I want to highlight him as well is because he plays free safety for Georgia. He's one of the few returning starters for this Georgia defense that was historically good last year and is still phenomenal. Number two in scoring defense, only about 13 points a game is what Georgia allowed. Smith, a big part of that. And he plays free safety. And we know Devin McCourty's future, maybe a little bit uncertain. He could be retiring by season's end. He's closer to the end than the beginning. The Patriots have to figure out eventually what they'd like to do there. I don't think Kyle Duggar is the answer at free safety to me. You would want to keep him as close to the line of scrimmage as possible, as often as possible. He is so impactful there. And I think down the field, things are a little bit tougher for him. He makes a lot of his plays, even his plays on the football in the passing game, right tight to the line of scrimmage, like he did when he returned that pick six against the Raiders just a couple weeks ago. So Chris Smith, not necessarily a first round option and not the biggest guy in the world, but if Bill Belichick likes him because he's played in Kirby Smart's defense and because he thinks he's going to be able to jump to the NFL level and understand things pretty quickly, if he's pretty good in terms of his change of direction, we know that matters for the Patriots and their players in the secondary. Maybe he is an option for the Patriots on, say, day two. Keely Ringo, another Georgia secondary player at corner that the Patriots should have their eye on. This is somebody who's going to be matched up with, in all likelihood, Marvin Harrison Jr., who is probably the best receiver in the country already. Now, he can't be drafted yet, but he will be drafted and drafted very highly in 2024. So Ringo is a name to keep an eye on. Maybe the Patriots aren't eligible to pick him because right now they're slated to pick sort of in the middle of the first round, and maybe he's gone by then. Who knows? But I think he could really help himself based on how he plays in the college football playoff here. A couple more safeties again. All right. Ohio State's Ronnie Hickman and Lathan Ransom. Those are two guys. Okay. Dane's fourth favorite matchup in the college football playoff. TCU receiver Quentin Johnson, who might be the best receiver in this year's class in 2023 versus Michigan corner DJ Turner. Now, DJ Turner, probably more of a day two, second, third round type of player, but he is a freak. He's actually on Bruce Feldman's freaks list as one of the best athletes in the country. He hit 23 miles an hour and he ran a 4.240, according to Bruce Feldman, during some workouts for Michigan. We'll see how he tests pre-draft. If he's that fast, maybe he does work his way into the first round conversation, especially with a good showing in the college football playoff, especially against somebody like Quentin Johnston. So that's one certainly to watch. And here's the last one I'm going to throw at you because, and I mentioned it during the conversation with Cassel, the Patriots are going to need tackle help. Now, if that help doesn't come via a veteran free agent, you've got to start looking in the draft the way they did back in 2018, where they took Isaiah Wynn out of Georgia to be what I thought at the time was their starting left tackle. Lucky for them, they ended up trading for Trent Brown the very next day during the draft. And we know what happened from there. Isaiah Wynn blew his Achilles. Trent Brown moves into the starting role, left tackle. The Patriots win a Super Bowl. Okay, so that one didn't go exactly according to plan, but it ended up working out really, really well for the Patriots. What if they dipped into the Georgia tackle bucket again in 2023? I know people might be rolling their eyes because they don't want to repeat of what happened with Isaiah Wynn, but Broderick Jones certainly looks like one of the best tackle prospects in this year's class. Dane really likes the matchup that he will face against Ohio State's defensive end, Zach Harrison. Jones is sort of right where you want your tackles to be. He's not incredibly long. He's not Paris Johnson, who for Ohio State is 6'7", 300 pounds, more of a Nate Solder build. Broderick Jones is bigger than Isaiah Wynn at 6'4", 315, but not much bigger than Isaiah Wynn. And so he's going to have to be a really good athlete. But again, if he can show that against top-end competition, in the college football playoff, that he can hold up, now you're talking about somebody who's going to start creeping up into that first half of the first round. Jones certainly will have his hands full with Harrison because Harrison is long. He's a powerful guy. And so that should give scouts a pretty good indication as to how Jones will fare against bigger, stronger athletes. Even though he's in the SEC, he's facing the best of the best, and that goes a long way for the NFL. What he's able to do against Ohio State will matter big time as well. That, again, to me, he is sort of in realistic range for the Patriots in the first round if they want to try to land a tackle. All right, there are some college football names for you. Appreciate Dane Brugler and all the work he does on The Athletic.com. Enjoy the college football games. Enjoy this Patriots game. Try to, at least. I think there are some people out there who may be saying to themselves, just let me grieve this season already. It feels like the Patriots aren't going anywhere. But the fact of the matter is they are still alive to make the postseason. It should be their goal until they are truly mathematically eliminated. So we'll see if they can get that win against Teddy Bridgewater and the Miami Dolphins. Either way, we'll be talking to you right back here on Next Pats next week.